The airport buzzed with the usual chaos of rolling suitcases, impatient travelers, and the crackling voice announcing delayed flights. Alara Brooks pushed a hand through her hair and exhaled slowly, trying to ignore the knot of exhaustion twisting in her chest. The week had been brutal, back-to-back client meetings, endless revisions, and a rent deadline she wasn't ready for. She'd barely slept, barely eaten, barely breathed. But she had made it through, and now she was finally heading home. Her old suitcase, scuffed, dented, and faithful, slid across the carousel, but another bag bumped against it. Sleek, black, polished, the kind of luggage that belonged to someone who never checked their own bags. She pulled hers free, but the stranger's case toppled over and landed at her feet. She bent to pick it up out of instinct, her tired brain deciding to be polite for once. Only when she stepped outside into the cool evening air did she notice the problem. The luggage tag wasn't hers. Worse, her suitcase wasn't with her. "Oh no, 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 no," she whispered, flipping the tag around again as if her name might magically appear. Instead, bold metallic letters gleamed under the streetlight. Callan Ward, Private. Her pulse stumbled. Everyone knew that name. The reclusive millionaire whose innovations had rewritten entire industries. The man who hardly ever appeared in public. The one who built an empire and kept the world at arm's length. This bag wasn't just expensive. It was a fortune wrapped in leather. Alara dragged it into the nearest rideshare, promising herself she'd deal with this tomorrow. But curiosity clung to her like static electricity. By the time she reached her tiny apartment, that curiosity won. She unzipped the case. The scent of expensive cologne drifted upward, dark, clean, addictive. Inside, everything was arranged with surgical precision. Tailored shirts, a sleek tablet, a set of black cards so exclusive she'd only seen them online, and a watch, silver and midnight black, resting in a velvet case. She designed living rooms cheaper than that watch. But it was the envelope tucked into a hidden pocket that made her breath catch. A note, handwritten, short, sharp, filled with pain she didn't understand. Not again. Don't let them close. Never again. Her heart squeezed. Who wrote that? Who was it meant for? And who, exactly, was Callan Ward when he wasn't the billionaire the world feared? She snapped the case shut, guilt gnawing at her. She needed to return it. Now, personally. She wasn't about to call some corporate line and hope a receptionist passed the message along. She'd go to his office, hand it over, apologize, and hopefully get her own battered suitcase back. Simple. Except nothing about stepping into the Ward Industries tower the next morning felt simple. The building rose over the city like a glass fortress. Security personnel scanned her like she was entering a government bunker. Her shoes clicked nervously against marble floors as she followed a guard toward the private elevator. By the time the doors opened on the top floor, her palms were damp, her heartbeat frantic. His office was huge, all windows and cold elegance, but the man standing beside the desk made the room feel too small. Callan Ward. Tall, sharp-jawed, magnetic in a way that stole the air from her lungs. His suit fit like it had been tailored directly onto him, but it was his eyes that caught her, dark, intelligent, ice and fire all at once. He looked at her as if he'd been waiting for her without knowing it. And something inside him shifted. A crack in the armor. A spark. His gaze drifted to the briefcase in her hand, then returned to her face, slower this time, as if memorizing every detail. He said her name like a secret he wasn't supposed to know. Alara Brooks. Her breath hitched. You know my name. I make it my business to know who walks into my world. His voice was velvet over steel, deep enough to unsettle her bones. She swallowed. There was a mix-up at the airport. This is yours. For a moment, silence stretched tight between them. Then his expression changed, subtle but unmistakable. Fear, relief, recognition. And something else. Something dangerous. Before he could speak, the elevator dinged again. A man in a gray coat stepped out, eyes scanning the room with predatory intent. His gaze locked onto the briefcase, onto her. Callan's jaw tightened. Alara, he said quietly, stepping closer, voice dropping into a low warning. Don't let go of that case. Because someone else wanted it back. And they hadn't followed her here for nothing. The elevator door slid shut behind the man in the gray coat, but his cold stare lingered like a warning in the air. Alara straightened her shoulders, pretending not to notice the tension that suddenly wrapped around the room. Callan stepped closer to her, not touching her, yet somehow making her feel surrounded, protected, and unsettled all at once. Who was that? She whispered, without moving her lips. Someone who should not be here, Callan replied, his voice low, as if he feared the walls themselves were listening. He turned toward the security panel on the wall, tapping in a code so fast she barely registered his fingers moving. The office door clicked loudly, signal that the entire floor was now in lockdown. Alara gripped the briefcase tighter, her pulse racing. I only came to return your bag, not get involved in whatever this is. Callan stepped in front of her, blocking the view of the hallway with his broad frame. You came to return my bag, and somehow that makes you the most important person in this building today. His words sent a strange shiver through her, not of fear, but of something deeper, something dangerous. Callan glanced toward the glass walls, scanning the skyline, as if expecting danger to come from outside as well. His jaw flexed. That man following you, he has been trying to get his hands on something inside that case for weeks. Alara hugged the briefcase to her chest, feeling the weight of it in a new way. I didn't open anything, she lied, the memory of the handwritten note burning in her mind. Callan looked at her, then really looked at her. His eyes were sharp enough to slice right through her deception, yet soft enough that she felt warmth spread through her chest. I am glad you didn't, he said, because if you had, you'd be in far more danger than you realize. She swallowed hard. Then why is he here? Why today? Because he thinks he can use you to get to me, Callan said, stepping even closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. And because he thinks you're an easy target. His expression darkened. He's wrong. Alara should have been terrified, but there was something about Callan, something steady, something fierce, that kept her from panicking. Look, I said firmly, I don't want trouble, I just want my own suitcase back, and maybe a cab ride home so I can forget I ever stepped into your life. Callan let out a breath that sounded almost like a laugh, but it carried no humor. You think walking away is that simple? She opened her mouth to argue, but the security monitor suddenly flashed red. Floor access breach detected. The voice echoed overhead, emotionless and cold. Callan moved, instantly pulling Alara behind his desk, his movements controlled and powerful. Stay low, he murmured, they're not after you, they're after me. But you're holding something they want, and that puts you in their line of fire. Alara crouched, heart pounding. Why not just give them whatever they're after? Because what's in that briefcase isn't just valuable, Callan said, it's explosive, and in the wrong hands, it could destroy far more than my company. She blinked up at him, confusion tightening her chest. But it's just papers and a watch and a notebook. Callan's jaw tensed, as if she'd spoken a forbidden truth. That notebook, he said quietly, is the reason someone is willing to break into my building. He met her eyes, and for the first time, she saw something raw beneath his guarded exterior fear. The elevator dinged again. This time, heavy footsteps echoed closer, slower, deliberate. Callan inhaled, deeply bracing himself. Alara, he whispered, whatever you do, don't hand that briefcase to anyone but me. The footsteps stopped just outside the door, and a voice she didn't recognize spoke through the crack. Miss Brooks, we know you're in there. Open the door and everything will be easy. Her blood turned cold. How did they know her name? Callan shot her a look that was equal parts fire and warning. They're not here to negotiate, he said. They're here to take you. Alara's breath caught in her throat. Because of a single mistake at an airport, she was now trapped in a glass tower with a dangerous millionaire, a stolen briefcase, and strangers who knew her name. And the worst part was the look in Callan's eyes. The look that said he would burn the entire world before letting them touch her. The voice outside the office door slipped under Alara's skin like ice. She pressed her back against the desk, trying to steady her breathing, while Callan stood in front of her like a human shield. The silence that followed was too sharp, too perfect, like the air itself was waiting to break. The lights flickered. Callan's head snapped toward the ceiling. They cut the power to the floor, he murmured, but they underestimated one thing. His fingers flew across a panel hidden under the edge of his desk, and a soft hum rose from the walls, a backup system he designed himself. A faint glow filled the room, enough to see, but not enough for anyone outside to track their movements easily. Alara swallowed hard. Callan, this is insane. What are they trying to do? His jaw tightened. Get leverage over me, and you walked into their perfect opportunity. She searched his eyes for a hint of guilt, anger, anything that told her she shouldn't blame herself for this. But all she found was focus, the kind that belonged to a man used to fighting wars in silence. The doorknob shifted. Callan reacted first, grabbing her hand and pulling her toward a concealed panel behind a bookshelf. He pressed his palm to the glass, and a hidden door slid open, revealing a narrow corridor leading deeper into the building. Go, he ordered, voice low and firm. She didn't move. What about you? I am right behind you. But the handle turned again, harder this time, more forceful. Callan stepped forward and shut the door between them, plunging her into darkness. Callan, she breathed, pounding on the metal, no response, only muffled sounds from the office, the scrape of furniture, the low rumble of a man's voice, and Callan's sharp reply. Her pulse thudded painfully. She couldn't stay here. Hiding wasn't her nature, even if fear crawled up her spine like cold fingers. She slid her hand along the wall, finding a small switch. A strip of dim lights blinked on, revealing a maintenance shaft designed for emergencies. She followed the narrow hallway, careful not to make noise. As she walked, she caught bits of conversation, echoing through vents. Get out of my building. Callan's voice clipped, cold, furious. We only want the case. A second voice replied, amused, confident, like he believed Callan would break under the pressure. Alara's grip tightened on the briefcase. She had no idea what was inside besides the watch cards and notes she'd seen, but the weight of it felt different now, heavier with secrets. Turn it over or things get messy. You cross that line, and you will not walk out of this tower. Callan's voice had turned lethal. Alara's heart hammered against her chest. She quickened her pace, hoping to find another exit. The corridor branched suddenly, leading to a small window overlooking the alley behind the building. She stepped closer, peering down. The same gray-coated man from the elevator stood below, speaking into a phone, pacing, as if waiting for someone to drive Alara into his hands. The truth hit her hard. They weren't just after Callan. They were after her, because she held the one thing he wouldn't surrender. A sudden vibration in her pocket made her jump. She pulled out her phone, 2 messages. The first from an unknown number. You can't hide forever, Miss Brooks. The second from Callan. Stay where you are, I am coming for you. She barely had time to read them when footsteps echoed behind her in the narrow corridor. Slow. Deliberate. Getting closer. Alara spun around, clutching the briefcase to her chest. A shadow stretched across the wall, long and distorted. Then a figure turned the corner. But it wasn't Callan. It was one of the intruders, slipping into the shaft with snake-like ease, blocking her escape. There you are, he crooned, smiling in a way that made her skin crawl. You've been carrying something that doesn't belong to you. Why don't you hand it to me and I'll make this quick? Alara's breath trembled, but her voice didn't break. If you want it, you'll have to take it. The man's smile widened like he enjoyed the challenge. Challenge accepted. Before he could reach her, a powerful arm came from behind him, a blur of motion, slamming his head against the metal wall and dropping him instantly. Callan stepped out of the shadow's eyes, burning adrenaline darkening his expression. I told you to stay put, he murmured, pulling her close, checking her for injuries, his hands rough, but his touch careful. She stared up at him, heart racing from fear, and something else, something she didn't want to name yet. Callan, that man knew my name. I know. How? He swallowed hard, jaw tight. They've been watching you since the airport. Her body chilled. Why would anyone watch me? Callan exhaled slowly, as if bracing himself to reveal something dangerous. Because Alara, the person they want, isn't just me. It's the woman who unknowingly walked into the center of a war. And that woman, as Yutha climbed back into Callan's private office, was silent except for the distant wail of sirens and the soft metallic hum of the building's emergency systems. Callan kept Alara close, one hand hovering protectively near her back as they moved through the hidden corridor that only he seemed to know existed. His movements were precise, controlled, but she could feel the tension coiled beneath his calm like a storm waiting to break. When they stepped out into the office, the room was a mess. Chairs, overturned glass shattered across the floor, a smear of blood near the wall where Callan had clearly fought off one of the intruders. Alara's breath caught. She imagined him outnumbered, cornered, alone. The thought shook her in a way she didn't want to admit. Callan locked the door behind them, engaging another layer of security. "You're safe now," he said, but his voice was low, almost strained. Safe felt like a lie. Her heart was still pounding, and the city outside looked too dark, too close, too dangerous. She set the briefcase gently on his desk, but Callan grabbed her wrist, stopping her. Not yet. His eyes were darker than before, shadows swirling, with emotion she couldn't name. "Alara, we need to talk." She swallowed and nodded. "Okay, talk then." Callan hesitated, and that alone frightened her more than everything else that had happened tonight. He wasn't a man who hesitated. He wasn't a man who feared anything. But right now, he looked like he feared her reaction more than armed intruders. He moved to the window, staring down at the city, as if looking for something he couldn't find. The glass reflected his face, his expression haunted. "They didn't come for the papers," he said quietly. "They didn't come for the watch or the cards." Alara felt her stomach twist. Then what did they want? Callan turned toward her, and for the first time she saw the truth in his eyes, the truth he had been hiding since the moment she returned his bag. They wanted the journal. Her breath caught. That little notebook she had seen, but promised herself she wouldn't read. The one with the sharp words, the pain, the warnings. "Why would anyone want your journal?" she whispered, confused. "Because it isn't just a journal." He stepped toward the briefcase, fingers brushing the leather almost reverently. "It contains the only record of something I've been building for years, something no one in the world knows, about something worth billions if it falls into the wrong hands." Her pulse thudded hard. What kind of journal holds something worth billions? Callan lifted his gaze to hers, and something inside him softened like he was letting down walls he'd kept up for a lifetime. "It holds the blueprint of a system that could bring down entire companies," he said quietly. "Expose corruption. Collapse empires built on lies. People have killed for less." Alara stared at him, unable to speak. "And you, Alara, ended up carrying it right through the middle of an airport, with no idea what kind of target it painted on your back." She sank onto the edge of the desk, suddenly lightheaded. "So you're saying I accidentally walked into a war?" "Yes. And you didn't tell me." Callan moved closer, crouching down so they were eye level. His voice dropped, soft but fierce. "I didn't tell you because I wanted to protect you. Because I thought once you returned the briefcase you would walk out of this building and never look back." Her chest tightened painfully, but she couldn't deny the truth. She would have walked away, before tonight. But then she forced him to meet her eyes. "Callan, what is in that journal that is worth risking my life for?" His jaw clenched as he slowly opened the briefcase and pulled out the slim, dark notebook, placing it in her hands. The leather was warm from his touch, like it held something alive inside. "The pages contain names," he said quietly. "Evidence. Proof of the people responsible for what happened to my father. The people who stole from this company for years. The people who ruined lives and walked away untouched." Her breath shuddered. "So you're exposing them?" "I am going to end them," Callan whispered, "and they know I can." Alara looked deep into his eyes and saw the truth behind his fear. They weren't coming after the journal. They were coming after him. Callan stepped closer, the air thickening with something electric and unspoken. His voice dropped to a whisper rough and raw. And now, Alara, he said you're part of this, whether you want to be or not. Because the moment you walked into this office, you became the one person they fear the most. Why me, she breathed. Because you have something no one else has, he said, leaning in. Something even I don't have anymore. What is that? Callan's gaze lowered to her lips, then rose slowly back to her eyes. Something worth protecting. The city outside Callan's penthouse office pulsed with cold neon light, but inside the room everything felt still heavy and suspended in a moment that neither Alara nor Callan knew how to escape. She clutched the journal to her chest as if it were a fragile heartbeat, while Callan stood inches away, the shadows of his past clinging to him like a second skin. We need to leave, he finally said, his voice low and tense. They know you're with me, and that means they won't stop. Alara swallowed her fear. Where will we go? Somewhere they can't reach us, somewhere only I know. He reached for her hand, and she let him take it without hesitation, her fingers fitting into his, as if they'd been waiting for that touch all along. As he guided her through the private corridors of the building, she realized he moved differently, now more alert, more dangerous, more willing to risk everything. They stepped into a private elevator, a hidden one she hadn't noticed before. Callan pressed his thumb to a sensor, the doors closed, and the box dropped silently, as though sliding into a world separate from the rest of the city. Alara breathed out slowly. Callan, this journal of yours, why hide something so important? Why not hand it to the authorities? Because the authorities are the ones protecting the men in it, he replied, bitterness carving through his tone. I learned that the hard way. The elevator stopped in an underground garage, warmer and quieter than any she had seen. A sleek black car waited, already running, its engine humming with quiet menace. As they got in, Callan checked every angle of the mirrors, every corner of the garage, like he expected danger to be lying in wait. Alara watched him, realizing that this man was more than a millionaire, more than a tech genius. He was a survivor carrying scars that would never fully disappear. They drove through an underground tunnel until they emerged onto the open road far from the tower. Just as Alara started to breathe, a black SUV slid into their lane, headlights glaring. Callan tightened his grip on the wheel. Hold on, he muttered. The SUV accelerated, trying to ram them off the road. Alara gasped as the car jolted, but Callan reacted instantly, swerving with sharp precision. They're trying to trap us, she choked out. They won't, he said, his voice steady. Not while I'm driving. Another SUV appeared, boxing them in from the left. Callan accelerated, weaving through traffic, but they followed like predators, sensing weakness. Alara's heart pounded. Callan, what do they want from you? Not from me, he growled, eyes fixed on the road. From you. Her breath caught. Why me? Because you're the only person I've trusted with the journal. Because they think they can use you to break me. He glanced at her, his gaze fierce and protective. They're wrong. For a moment, the danger outside didn't matter. Only the heat in his eyes did. But then the SUV in front slammed its brakes. Callan reacted instantly, turning sharply onto a narrow side road that twisted between abandoned warehouses. The SUVs screeched behind, but couldn't follow fast enough. Alara's chest heaved. Callan, please tell me this is almost over. It's not, he said honestly, and he reached out, taking her trembling hand in his. But you're with me, and that means they don't win. They drove in silence until they reached a dimly lit industrial district. Callan pulled into a hidden garage, sealed with rusted metal doors that only opened when he tapped a code onto the steering wheel. Inside was a bunker-like space, outfitted with screens, secure lines, weapons, and files stacked in careful rows. This is your hideout, she whispered. One of them, he admitted. I never knew when I'd need it again. He led her inside, Amara's breath shaking as she looked around. Maps, contracts, encrypted documents, and dozens of files stuffed into metal drawers, all of them marked with the same symbol she'd seen faintly embossed on the journal. Callan moved closer, his voice dropping to a whisper that slid straight into her bones. Alara, I need you to understand something. Once you saw what was in that briefcase, you entered a world that doesn't let people walk away easily. She lifted her chin. Then what happens now? Callan looked at her with a mixture of pain, desire, and fear more intense than anything he'd shown before. Now, he said, we fight back. We expose them. We destroy every person who made you a target, and I will not let anything happen to you. Her voice trembled. Callan, why do you care so much? He stepped into her space, the electricity between them impossible to ignore. Because losing you would break me in ways nothing else ever has. Before Alara could respond, one of the screens in the bunker flickered to life. A man appeared staring directly into the camera. Callan Ward, you think you can hide the girl, you think you can protect her. The man smiled cold and familiar. But we already know where she lives. Alara's blood turned to ice. The camera zoomed in, showing her apartment building. Then her door. Then a shadow moving inside. Callan's face, drained of color, his voice sharp with fury. Alara, he whispered, they're not after you anymore. They're inside your home. The screen in Callan's bunker went black, but the image burned into Alara's mind long after the pixels vanished. Someone had been inside her apartment, moving through her things, walking across her floors, touching the life she had built with her own hands. The invasion felt worse than violence because it was personal, because it was meant to shatter her from the inside. She stood frozen, the room spinning around her, as Callan reached for the nearest weapon, sliding a black matte gun into a holster, and checking the magazine with a speed that told her he had done this many times before. Stay here, he ordered automatically. Alara shook her head before he even finished. No, this is my home, Callan, my life. You don't get to tell me to hide while someone destroys everything I have. His jaw tightened, and for a moment he looked like he might argue, then something in her trembling voice broke through his armor. He set a hand on her shoulder, grounding her, pulling her back from the edge of panic. We're not going to your apartment, he said finally, because that's exactly what they want us to do. They're setting a trap. Alara's breath hitched. A trap? For who? For both of us, Callan replied. And now we have to think smarter than them. He turned to a wall panel and pressed a sequence of buttons she didn't understand. A large screen flickered to life, showing multiple feeds, security cameras, all pointing at her apartment building. The hall was empty, the door closed, and no sign of the intruder remained. They're gone, she whispered. For now, Callan said, but they wanted us to see that message. They wanted you afraid. They wanted me unbalanced. He stepped closer, eyes scanning hers like he was searching for cracks. But they underestimated you. Alara felt a rush of heat and fear swirl together. Callan might have seen strength in her. She wasn't sure she truly had, but she wanted to believe him because she had no one else to believe in right now. Callan paced the room, analyzing every angle of the situation, his mind moving faster than the flickering screens around him. These men won't stop until they have you or the journal. We need to disappear for a while. Alara stiffened. Disappear. Callan, I have clients, an entire business. I am responsible for. My landlord will evict me if... She stopped when she saw the way Callan looked at her, a mix of regret and something deeper, something that made her heart stumble. Alara, he said gently, you can rebuild a business, you can rent another apartment, but I can't replace you. Her breath caught painfully. She wasn't prepared for the intensity of his words, for the way he said them, like he would burn down the world before letting it take her. Before she could respond, an alarm pierced the bunker, sharp and urgent. Breach detected, Sector 3. Breach detected, repeating, breach detected. Callan froze, eyes lifting toward the ceiling. They found the bunker, he said quietly. How, she whispered, mind spinning. How could they find this place? Because someone close to me is helping them, he replied, voice steady but dangerous. Someone who knows my escapes, my systems, my habits. He grabbed her hand, pulling her toward a narrow back door she hadn't noticed before. Alara kept pace, her heart racing as the metallic clack of footsteps echoed from another room. Callan pushed her through the exit into a long, dimly lit tunnel. Move, he ordered, but stay behind me. She wanted to argue, but the fear chilled her lips. She followed, clinging tightly to the journal as if it were a piece of her soul. Gunshots cracked behind them, bouncing off the steel walls. Alara flinched, and Callan's body immediately shifted, covering her, shielding her without hesitation. Go, he shouted, the tunnel shaking. With impact, go now. They ran side by side, their footsteps pounding, until they reached another metal door. Callan slammed a hand against the panel, but the screen blinked red twice before opening slower than it should. Somebody tampered with the locks, he growled, his voice tight. The door finally slid open, revealing a secondary chamber lined with emergency supplies, weapons, encrypted devices, and a rugged vehicle ready to move. Callan grabbed a bag, shoving gear inside with practiced speed. Alara tried to steady her breathing, but the sound of boots moving closer down the tunnel made every muscle in her body go rigid. Callan tossed her a jacket. Take this, put it on, and stay low. Alara slipped it on, but when she turned to get into the vehicle, Callan stopped, her fingers gripping her wrist. Wait. She looked back at him, breathless, shaking. What? His eyes searched hers, fierce and unyielding. I am not letting them take you. No matter what happens outside, no matter who comes for us, you stay with me. Do you understand? She nodded, barely managing to whisper yes. The tunnel lights flickered again. Voices floated closer. Callan opened the car door, but before she could climb in, he leaned in, close breath brushing her ear. They made a mistake, coming after you, he murmured, because now they've given me something worth fighting for. Gunshots thundered through the tunnel, again the enemy drawing nearer. Callan shoved her into the vehicle, then slid into the driver's seat. Hold on, Alara, he whispered, this is where the real war begins. The tires screeched against the concrete as Callan slammed the vehicle into gear, sending them racing down the secondary tunnel. The walls blurred past them, streaks of light and shadows cutting through the darkness. Alara gripped the seat, her heart hammering against her ribs as the echo of gunfire chased them from behind. They're too close, she whispered, the tremble in her voice barely controlled. Callan didn't look at her, his jaw-locked eyes narrowed with lethal focus. They won't catch us, he said, not unless they want to die trying. The tunnel opened suddenly into a larger garage, the overhead lights flickering, as if struggling to stay alive. Just as Callan swerved toward the exit, a massive metal gate began sliding down from the ceiling. They're sealing us, and Alara gasped. Callan accelerated, foot hitting the pedal with brutal force. Brace yourself. She barely had time to grab the handle before the vehicle shot forward, scraping beneath the descending gate. It slammed shut behind them with a metallic crash, like the mouth of a beast snapping shut. Callan took a breath, steadying his grip. They're getting smarter, too smart. Someone is feeding them information in real time. Alara's pulse skipped. Someone close to you. Someone who shouldn't be alive, he murmured under his breath, almost too soft to hear. She turned sharply. What did you say? Callan didn't answer, not right away. Instead, he steered the car up a ramp, emerging onto an empty stretch of industrial road. Night hung heavy over the city, fog drifting between the buildings like ghosts called to the surface. Alara watched him, the way his fingers tightened around the wheel, the tension in his shoulders, the shadow that crossed his face like an old wound reopened. Callan, what aren't you telling me? She asked softly. He hesitated, just long enough for fear to curl cold in her stomach. The man leading them, he finally said, the one who broke into your apartment, filmed it, and broadcasted it to us. The one directing the attacks, the one who keeps getting ahead of us. Who is he? She breathed. Callan swallowed, hard, eyes fixed on the road. His name is Marcus Hale. The name meant nothing to her, but she could feel its weight. Callan continued, voice low-edged with something dangerously close to grief. He was my mentor, my closest friend. We built the company together. He was the brother I never had. Alara's chest tightened. What happened between you? Callan's knuckles whitened. He betrayed me, sold our prototype to a competitor, nearly bankrupted the company, and when I confronted him, he disappeared. Everyone assumed he fled the country. Her heart dropped, but he didn't flee. No, he wanted revenge, and now he's using you to finish what he started. The car turned sharply onto a quieter road, surrounded by abandoned buildings. Alara looked out the window, noticing movement in the shadows, figures shifting, staying just out of reach of the streetlights. Callan slowed the car. We're not alone. He reached into the glove compartment, grabbing a slim device. He pressed a button, and every light on the street blew out, plunging the road into darkness. Ilara's breath caught. Callan. Stay down, he ordered. The first bullet shattered the rear window. Ilara ducked, her heart pounding, as Callan slammed the car into reverse, spinning it in a tight circle. Dark figures emerged from the shadows, moving faster than she expected, armed and coordinated. Callan pulled a gun from his jacket and fired through the windshield, hitting one of them cleanly. The others scattered. We need to move now, he snapped. He floored the accelerator, and the car shot forward, barreling through the maze of abandoned buildings. Ilara clutched the journal to her chest, feeling the weight of every name inside it. She thought she heard someone shouting her name from far away, but couldn't tell if it was real or her imagination unraveling. The car jerked violently as something hit their back tire. Callan cursed under his breath, fighting the wheel. They're trying to disable us. The vehicle skidded toward a concrete barrier. Ilara screamed as the car slammed into it, throwing them forward. The airbags deployed with a deafening pop, and for a moment everything went white. Her ears rang, her vision blurred. Callan's voice sounded distant. Ilara, can you hear me? Stay with me, stay with me. She blinked, trying to focus. The car doors were being pulled open from the outside, rough hands grabbing and dragging her out into the cold night. Callan lunged forward, fighting off two men at once, but a third struck him from behind, sending him crashing to the ground. Callan, she choked, trying to push herself upright. A familiar voice stepped out of the darkness, stopping her cold. Hello, Ilara. A tall man walked toward her, his smile sharp and cruel eyes bright with triumph. Marcus Hale. The ghost from Callan's past. The man who wanted her dead. Callan struggled against the men, holding him down, shouting her name, but Marcus crouched in front of her, gripping her chin, forcing her to look at him. You really thought you were important, he whispered. You were just the bait to draw him out. Nothing more. Ilara's breathing trembled, but her eyes didn't break. Marcus chuckled softly. Brave, I like brave. He leaned close enough for her to feel his breath. But bravery won't save you now. The night vibrated with danger, thick enough to choke on. Marcus snapped his fingers. Bring the journal, we end this tonight. And Ilara realized with crushing clarity that Chapter 7 wasn't about survival anymore. It was about sacrifice. The night air felt colder than steel as Marcus Hale stood over Ilara, his shadow stretching across the cracked pavement. The men surrounding them moved with the precision of trained predators, not hired thugs, but professionals. Callan struggled against the arms restraining him, blood trickling from a cut above his eyebrow, his voice hoarse as he shouted her name. Marcus ignored him entirely. He crouched in front of Ilara, tilting her chin upward, his smile disturbingly calm. You know, Callan used to be the clever one, but ever since you walked into his life, he's been sloppy, emotional, reckless. His fingers brushed a strand of hair from her cheek, and Ilara jerked away, the disgust in her eyes unmistakable. Marcus laughed quietly, clearly entertained. Oh, I see why he likes you. Fire suits you, Ilara. She spat the words without thinking. Touch me again and I'll show you fire. Callan lunged forward with a roar, but two men forced him down, slamming his shoulder into the ground. Marcus didn't even glance at him. She's feisty, he said, almost purring. You picked an interesting woman, Callan. Ilara's heart pounded, but she stared straight into Marcus's cold eyes. What do you want from me? Marcus rose slowly, his boots crunching over broken glass as he paced. Oh, sweetheart, this was never about you. Not at first. But once Callan started protecting you, I knew I had found his weakness. Callan's voice cracked with raw fury. She's not part of this, Marcus, let her go. Marcus finally turned to him, smirking. You still don't get it, do you, Callan? She's the key. She brought the journal back to you. She walked straight into your office with the only evidence that could destroy you in my hands. Ilara's breath stilled. What are you talking about, destroy him? The journal proves you're the one who betrayed the company. Marcus grinned, the kind of smile that made the skin crawl. And who do you think the world will believe, sweetheart, the man who vanished for years, or the man whose father died in a scandal, so big the media still whispers about it? Ilara's pulse froze. Callan's father he died because of. Marcus stepped closer, voice dripping with venom. Because of Callan. Callan went still, real fear flashing through his eyes. Ilara, don't listen to him, don't believe a word. Marcus cut him off. That journal you're holding, it doesn't clear Callan Brooks, it destroys him. Those names, those transactions, those signatures. They all trace back to Callan's father, but guess who finalized the documents? He leaned down, though she could see the truth in his expression. Callan Ward, the prodigy, the beloved son, the genius responsible for his own father's death. Ilara's vision blurred as the world tilted. She looked at Callan, and something inside her twisted painfully. You told me your father was sabotaged by your partner, by the people trying to steal from you. Callan's voice cracked, raw and desperate. Ilara, I was set up. I was 17. Marcus forged my signature. I swear I didn't know what he planned. Marcus clapped slowly, mocking. Bravo, Callan, always the victim. Always the golden boy with a tragic past. You think she'll believe you once the media sees your name on those documents, once they hear how your father died choking on fumes in an explosion caused by your authorization? Ilara's heart pounded so hard it hurt. Callan looked at her, pleading, begging silently for her to trust him. The briefcase felt like lead in her hands, her fingers gripping the journal so tightly her knuckles turned white. Marcus stepped back, raising a hand. Enough chit-chat. Bring her. Two men grabbed Ilara, hauling her up. Callan tried to break free, but a hard strike across his ribs sent him collapsing again. Ilara screamed Callan, but Marcus held her jaw, forcing her to look at him, not at Callan, not at the blood on the ground. Listen to me, Ilara. You are going to walk away from him. You are going to give me the journal, and you are going to live. And if I don't, she whispered, voice trembling but steady. Marcus smiled, colder than winter. Then Callan Ward dies tonight. The breath ripped from Callan's lungs, but before he could speak, Marcus lifted a hand, silencing him. Take her to the car. Ilara struggled, kicking, fighting, clawing at their arms. Callan fought too, shouting her name until his throat was raw. Marcus walked behind them, speaking low enough for only Ilara to hear. Do you know what the funniest part is, sweetheart? You were never supposed to matter. But the moment Callan looked at you, I knew I could break him. People like him don't fall in love often, but when they do, they fall hard. He leaned closer, his whisper slicing into her chest. And now I get to watch him lose everything, especially you. The men shoved her into the back of a black SUV, slamming the door shut as Marcus moved to the driver's side. Callan screamed her name again, tearing his voice apart. Marcus whispered one last sentence before starting the engine. Say goodbye, Ilara. Your chapter with Callan Ward ends tonight. And for the first time since she met Callan Brooks, she felt true terror. Not for herself. For him. The SUV shot forward with a violent jerk, throwing Ilara against the seat. Her wrists were tied, her heart pounding so loudly she could barely hear Marcus speaking to the men in the front. The road ahead was dark, the city far behind them, and every mile they drove felt like another thread snapping inside her chest. Callan was still back there. Hurt. Bleeding. And she didn't know if he was alive. She twisted her hands, pulling against the restraints, ignoring the burn cutting into her skin. She couldn't just sit and wait to be delivered like a package to her own destruction. Marcus watched her through the rearview mirror, amusement dancing in his cold eyes. If you keep struggling, you'll cut your wrists open, he said almost gently, like he enjoyed the idea. And trust me, you'll want to stay conscious for what comes next. Her voice was shaky, but steady. Why me? Why are you so obsessed with dragging me into your feud? Marcus smiled, the kind of smile that belonged to a man who had already rehearsed every cruelty. Because Callan cares about you, and I want him to watch everything he loves fall apart. She glared back at him. You're wrong about him, he doesn't break that easily. Marcus's eyes chilled. Then I'll break you first. The words hit her harder than any blow could. The SUV suddenly swerved, skidding sideways as if hit by something massive. Alara's head snapped back, her vision blurring. Marcus cursed, slamming his hands on the steering wheel, trying to regain control. What the hell was that? One of the men shouted. Alara strained to look out the window. Another vehicle was behind them, racing toward them with impossible speed, the headlights cutting through the darkness like twin blades. Callan. She felt it before she saw him. The black armored vehicle rammed the SUV again, sending them fishtailing across the abandoned road. Marcus growled low and furious. Of course he followed. He always was too sentimental. The SUV jerked violently as Marcus hit the brakes, spinning the car into a cloud of dust. Callan's vehicle skidded to a stop just a few meters away. The doors flew open. Callan stepped out. And Alara had never seen him like this. His face streaked with blood, jaw-clenched eyes burning with something fierce and unrestrained. He held a gun in one hand, the other gripping the doorframe, as if he were barely containing the storm inside him. Marcus stepped out of the SUV too, smiling like a wolf greeting another predator. Well, you made good time, Callan. Callan didn't smile, didn't blink, didn't breathe. Let her go, Marcus. No, Marcus said simply. Callan raised the gun without hesitation. Then I'll take her back. Alara's breath caught. The tension between the two men crackled like electricity, the kind that could burn the world if unleashed. Marcus motioned to his men. Shoot if he moves an inch. Callan's voice was lethal. If even one bullet leaves a gun, Alara dies in the crossfire, and you know it. Marcus's smile thinned. Then drop yours. Callan didn't move. Marcus cocked his head. Do it or I'll break her neck right now. I promise I'll do it, Callan. I've waited years to watch you lose something you care about. Alara's stomach twisted as Callan slowly lowered the gun but didn't drop it. His eyes flicked to her for a fraction of a second, a silent message. Hold on. She nodded so slightly no one but him could have seen. Marcus stepped forward, reaching for her. Bring her to me. As one of the men approached her, Callan moved. Vast. Violent. Unpredictable. He fired a single shot, hitting the man directly in the leg, the gun skidding across the ground. Alara threw herself sideways, headbutting the second guard, knocking him off balance. Marcus grabbed her arm, yanking her upright, fury twisting across his face. You little. Callan sprinted toward them like a force of nature. Marcus pulled her in front of him, using her as a shield, but Alara slammed her elbow into his ribs with every ounce of strength she had. He stumbled just enough. Callan reached them. He ripped Alara out of Marcus's grip, pulling her behind him, his breathing ragged but steady. You okay? He whispered. She nodded, tears burning her eyes. Callan, he said, the documents frame you. They say you killed your... I know, he cut her off, voice tight. And I'll explain everything. But first we finish this. Marcus rose, gun in hand, aiming at Callan's heart. You think you can win, Ward. You think you can protect her forever. Callan didn't look away. I don't need forever. I just need 1 second. Marcus pulled the trigger. A shot rang out. Alara screamed, Callan, no. But Callan didn't fall. Marcus did. A single perfect bullet hit his shoulder, sending him collapsing backward, the gun slipping from his hand. Callan stood over him, eyes cold with finality. This ends tonight, Marcus. Marcus spat blood, laughing weakly. You think she'll forgive you when she learns the truth, how your father really died, how? Callan cut him off with a kick, sending him into the dirt. He turned to Alara, his face raw with fear, love, pain, everything he'd hidden now bare. Alara, there's something I need to tell you, and it can't wait, because if Marcus doesn't kill me, the truth might. The night pressed in around them, heavy and breathless, as Callan stood before Alara, his chest rising and falling like he had run 1,000 miles just to reach her. The wind carried the echoes of the fight, the scent of dust and smoke, the faint groans of defeated men scattered across the ground. But none of it mattered now, because Callan's eyes were on her, and the truth he had buried for years was finally clawing its way to the surface. Alara, he said, his voice low, raw, and stripped of every wall he had ever built. I need you to listen to me, because what I tell you next might change everything you think about me. Her heart thudded painfully, but she stepped closer, close enough to feel the trembling breath he tried to control. Tell me, she whispered. Callan took in a shaky breath, the confession shaking loose from somewhere deep inside him. My father didn't die in an accident. He didn't collapse, the company didn't fail on its own. Marcus orchestrated everything. He forged my signature on the documents, used my name to approve dangerous operations, sabotaged the facility, and blamed the fallout on me. By the time I realized the truth, it was too late. The explosion killed him, and Marcus disappeared, leaving me branded for something I never did. Alara's breath caught. Callan, you were just a teenager. Callan nodded, but his voice broke. But the world didn't care. Investors blamed me, employees whispered behind my back, the media tore apart my family name. I rebuilt everything from the ground up, and the entire time Marcus watched, waiting to strike again. When you returned that briefcase, I thought it was just fate being cruel again. But then I saw you. And for the first time in years, I felt something that wasn't anger or fear. I felt hope. And that terrified me more than any threat Marcus ever made. Alara stepped forward, taking his shaking hand in hers. Callan, you should have told me sooner. I was afraid, he whispered, afraid you'd see me the way the world did. Afraid you'd walk away. She shook her head, tears filling her eyes. I never would have walked away. Before he could respond, Marcus groaned behind them, dragging himself onto his elbows, his face twisted with hatred. You think this is over, Callan? You think one confession changes anything? The board will believe my version, they always have. And once the journal is destroyed, everyone will know you as the man who killed his own father. Callan turned, but Alara stepped in front of him, surprising both men. No, she said, her voice trembling but strong, you don't get to twist this anymore. You lied, you stole, you ruined lives, and you tried to hurt both of us. But the truth is right here in this journal, and the truth always comes out. Marcus laughed weakly. And you think you can stop me, little girl? Alara tightened her grip on the journal. No, I don't need to, because he's not alone anymore. Callan's eyes softened with something deep, something fierce, something full of love he could no longer hide. Marcus pushed himself up, reaching for the gun nearby, but Callan was faster. With one swift move, he kicked the weapon away, sending it skidding across the ground. Marcus lunged at him, but this time Callan didn't hold back. The fight was brutal, sharp, and final, ending with Marcus pinned to the ground, Callan's knee pressed into his chest. It's over, Callan said, voice cold and unyielding. You're done. The police are coming. The truth is coming. And this time you won't escape. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder with every passing second. Marcus's eyes widened with the first flicker of fear he had shown all night. Callan stood and stepped back, pulling Alara into his arms as police cars surrounded them, flooding the scene with flashing lights. Officers dragged Marcus away, while paramedics approached, offering to treat Alara, but Callan held her close, refusing to let go. Are you hurt? He asked, his voice still shaking from the adrenaline and fear. She rested her forehead against his. Only if you don't stay with me. Callan let out a breath that sounded like a release of years of pain. I'm not going anywhere. Not now. Not ever. You are the only good thing that walked into my life, and I will never let the world take you from me. The officers confirmed Marcus was being arrested and taken into custody along with his men. The journal was placed in an evidence bag at Alara's request, but she and Callan both knew it held more than names and proof. It held hope for every life Marcus tried to ruin. As the lights dimmed and the chaos settled, Callan took Alara's hand, leading her away from the wreckage, toward a quiet stretch of road, where the first traces of dawn painted the sky. The worst is over, he whispered. She leaned against him, her voice soft but sure. So what happens now? Callan wrapped an arm around her, pulling her close as if afraid she might disappear with the night. Now, he said, we rebuild. We clear my name. We expose every lie. And when all of that is done... He turned to her, eyes warm with a love he no longer tried to hide. I start a life with the woman who saved mine. Alara smiled, tears slipping down her cheeks as she whispered. Then let's go home, Callan. And together they walked into the rising sun, leaving the darkness behind, and stepping into a future neither of them had dared to dream until they found each other.